Ram, 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 Hari, 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 Krishna, Hari, Krishna, Krishna, Hari, 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 Ram, Hari, Ram, Ram, Hari, 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 Krishna, Hari, Krishna, Krishna, Hari, 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 Ram, Hari, Ram, Ram, Hari, 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 Krishna, Hari, Krishna, Krishna, Hari, 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 Ram, Hari, Ram, Ram, Hari, 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 Krishna, Hari, Krishna, Krishna, Hari, 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 Ram, Hari, Ram, Ram, Hari, 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 Krishna, Hari, Krishna, Krishna, Hari, 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 Ram, Hari, Ram, 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 Hari, 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 Krishna, Hari, Krishna, Krishna, Hari, 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 Ram, Hari, Ram, Ram, Hari, 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 Krishna, Hari, Krishna, Krishna, Hari, 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 Ram, Hari, Ram, Ram, Hari, 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 Krishna, Hari, Krishna, Krishna, Hari, 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 Ram, Hari. I put the watch on. It was at 100% at 3 o'clock. So it's 3.5 hours ago. It has lost 14%. No, wait a minute. 2.5 hours ago.
Yeah, so it's the same thing.
It's the same problem. Yeah.
Okay.
It's 2. And I'm checking to see if there are any apps, you know. There's no apps. Okay, see you. Haribol. Devaki, Krishna Priya, everyone. See you later. Uvidam Saposha. Haribol. Rama, Rama, Hari, Hari, Krishna, Krishna, Hari. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know what to make of this thing. Right. So, Hare Krishna, devotees. So let us again read from Srila Prabhupada-lilamrita. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presta Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharne Niravishesha Shunyavadi Pastya Chadeshatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Pramanityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaur-Bhakta-Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakapatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha. Patidanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. So we're in the 11th chapter. Prabhupada is just getting ready to leave for America. He's been negotiating with Mrs. Maraji, Sumati Maraji, and her secretary assistant, Mr. Choksi, and various others, getting himself ready to go. Following Mrs. Maraji's instruction, her secretary, Mr. Choksi, made final arrangements for Bhaktivedanta Swami. Since he had no warm clothes, Mr. Choksi took him to buy a wool jacket and other woolen clothes. Mr. Choksi spent about 250 rupees on new clothes, at that time must have been like $50. Yeah. Mr. Choksi spent about 250 rupees on new clothes, including some new dhotis. At Bhaktivedanta Swami's request, Mr. Choksi printed 500 copies of a small pamphlet containing the 8 verses written by Lord Chaitanya and an advertisement for Srimad Bhagavatam in the context of an advertisement for the Scindia Steamship Company. Mr. Choksi, I asked him, why couldn't you go earlier? Why do you want to go now to the States at this age? He replied that, I'll be able to do something good, I'm sure. His idea was that someone would be there who would be able to go near people. His idea was that someone should be there who would be able to go near people who were lost in life and teach them and tell them what the correct thing is. I asked him so many times, why do you want to go to the States? Why don't you start something in Bombay or Delhi or Vrindavan? I was teasing him also. You're interested in seeing the States, therefore you want to go. All Swamijis want to go to the States, and you want to enjoy there. He said, what have I got to see? I've finished my life. But sometimes he was hot-tempered. He used to get angry at me for the delays. What is this nonsense, he would say. Then I would understand. He's getting angry now. Sometimes he would say, oh, Mrs. Maraji has still not signed this paper. She says, come back tomorrow. We will talk tomorrow. What is this? Why this daily going back? He would get angry. Then I would say, you can sit here. But he would say, how long do I have to sit? He would become impatient, unquote. Finally, Mrs. Maraji scheduled a place for him on one of her ships, the Jaladuta, which was sailing from Calcutta on August the 13th. She had made certain that he would travel on a ship whose captain understood the needs of a vegetarian and a Brahmin. Mrs. Maraji told the Jaladuta's captain, Arun Pandya, to carry extra vegetables and fruits for the Swami. Mr. Choksi spent the last 2 days with Bhaktivedanta Swami in Bombay, picking up the pamphlets at the press, purchasing clothes, and driving him to the station to catch the train for Calcutta. He arrived in Calcutta about 2 weeks before the Jaladuta's departure. Although he had lived much of his life in the city, he now had nowhere to stay. It was as he had written in his Vrindavan bhajan, I have my wife, sons, daughters, grandsons, everything, but I have no money, so they're a fruitless glory. Although in this city he had been so carefully nurtured as a child, those early days were also gone forever. Where have my loving father and mother gone to now? And where are all my elders, who are my own folk? Who will give me news of them? Tell me who. All that is left of this family life is a list of names. Out of the hundreds of people in Calcutta whom Bhaktivedanta Swami knew, he chose to call on Mr. Sasir Bhattacharya, the flamboyant kirtan singer he had met a year before at the governor's house in Lucknow. Mr. Bhattacharya was not a relative, not a disciple, nor even a close friend, but he was willing to help. Bhaktivedanta Swami called at his place and informed him that he would be leaving on a cargo ship in a few days. He needed a place to stay, and he would like to give some lectures. Mr. Bhattacharya immediately began to arrange a few private meetings at friends' homes where he would sing and Bhaktivedanta Swami would then speak. Mr. Bhattacharya thought the sadhus leaving for America should make an important news story. He accompanied Bhaktivedanta Swami to all the newspapers in Calcutta, the Hindustan Standard, the Amrita Bazar Patrika, the Jugantas, the Statesman, and others. Bhaktivedanta Swami had only one photograph, a passport photo, and they made a few copies for the newspapers. Mr. Bhattacharya would try to explain what the Swami was going to do, and the news writers would listen. But none of them wrote anything. Phew. Finally, they visited the Dainik Basumati, a local Bengali daily, which agreed to print a small article with Bhaktivedanta Swami's picture. A week before his departure on August the 6th, Bhaktivedanta Swami traveled to nearby Mayapur to visit the Samadhi of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Then he returned to Calcutta, where Mr. Bhattacharya continued to assist him with his final business and speaking engagements. Mr. Bhattacharya: "We just took a hired taxi to this place and that place, and he would go for preaching. I never talked to him during the preaching, but once when I was coming back from the preaching, I said, 'You said this thing about this, but I tell you it is not this, it is this.' I crossed him in something or argued, and he was furious. Whenever he argued, and I said, 'No, I think it is this,' then he was shouting. He was very furious. He said, 'You're always saying, I think, I think, I think. What is the importance of what you think? Everything is what you think, but it doesn't matter. It matters what Shastra says. You must follow.' I said, 'I must do what I think, what I feel. That is important.' He said, 'No, you should forget this. You should forget your desire. You should change your habit. Better you depend on Shastras. You follow what Shastra wants you to do and do it. I'm not telling you what I think, but I'm repeating what the Shastra says.' As the day of his departure approached, Bhaktivedanta Swami took stock of his meager possessions. He had only a suitcase, an umbrella, and a supply of dry cereal. He did not know what he would find to eat in America. Perhaps there would be only meat. If so, he was prepared to live on boiled potatoes and the cereal. His main baggage, several trunks of his books, was being handled separately by Scindia Cargo. 200 3-volume sets. The very thought of the books gave him confidence. When the day came for him to leave, he needed that confidence. He was making a momentous break with his previous life, and he was dangerously old and not in strong health, and he was going to an unknown and probably unwelcoming country. To be poor and unknown in India was one thing. Even in these Kali Yuga days, when India's leaders were rejecting Vedic culture and imitating the West, it was still India. It was still the remains of Vedic civilization. He had been able to see millionaires, governors, the prime minister, simply by showing up at their doors and waiting. A sannyasi was respected. The Srimad Bhagavatam was respected. But in America it would be different. He would be no one, a foreigner. And there was no tradition of sadhus, no temples, no free ashrams. But when he thought of the books he was bringing, transcendental knowledge in English, he became confident. When he met someone in America, he would give him a flyer, Srimad Bhagavatam, India's message of peace and goodwill. It was August 13th, just a few days before Janmashtami, the appearance day anniversary of Lord Krishna. The next day would be his own 69th birthday. During these last years, he had been in Vrindavan for Janmashtami. Many Vrindavan residents would never leave there. They were old and at peace in Vrindavan. Bhaktivedanta Swami was also concerned that he might die away from Vrindavan. That was why all the Vaishnav sadhus and widows had taken vows not to leave, even for Mathura, because to die in Vrindavan was the perfection of life. And the Hindu tradition was that a sannyasi should not cross the ocean and go to the land of the Mlechas. But beyond all that was the desire of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and his desire was non-different from that of Lord Krishna. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had predicted that the chanting of Hare Krishna would be known in every town and village of the world. Bhaktivedanta Swami took a taxi down to the Calcutta port. A few friends and admirers, along with his son Vrindavan, accompanied him. He writes in his diary, "Today at 9 a.m., embarked on MV Jaladuta. Came with me Bhagwati, the Dwawan of Sindhya Sansia, Mr. Sen Gupta, Mr. Ali, and Vrindavan. He was carrying a Bengali copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita, which he intended to read during the crossing. Somehow he would be able to cook on board, or if not, he would starve, whatever Krishna desired. He checked his essentials, passenger ticket, passport, visa, P-form, sponsor's address. Finally, it was happening. Srila Prabhupada, with what great difficulty I got out of the country. Some way or other, by Krishna's grace, I got out, so I could spread the Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. Otherwise, to remain in India, it was not possible. I wanted to start a movement in India, but I was not at all encouraged. The black cargo ship, small and weathered, was moored at dockside, a gangway leading from the dock to the ship's deck. Indian merchant sailors curiously eyed the elderly, saffron-dressed sadhu as he spoke last words to his companions and then left them and walked determinedly toward the boat. For thousands of years, Krishna Bhakti had been known only in India, not outside, except in twisted, faithless reports by foreigners. And the only swamis to have reached America had been non-devotees, Mayavadi impersonalists. But now Krishna was sending Bhaktivedanta Swami as his emissary. Hare Krishna. Okay, so that is the end of the first volume. I'm not sure how many volumes there are. Let me just see. How many volumes are there? There's 6 volumes. 6 volumes, we have finished 1. So now, volume 2, Planting the Seed, New York City, 1965 to 1966. So, chapter 12, The Journey to America. Some introductory words from Srila Prabhupada, from his Jaladutta diary, September the 10th, 1965. Today the ship is plying very smoothly. I feel today better, but I'm feeling separation from Sri Vrindavan and from my lords, Sri Govinda, Gopinath, Radha Damodar. My only solace is Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, in which I am tasting the nectarine of Lord Chaitanya's Leela. I have left Bharat Bhumi just to execute the order of Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in pursuance of Lord Chaitanya's order. I have no qualification, but have taken up the risk just to carry out the order of His divine grace. I depend fully on their mercy, so far away from Vrindavan. That was from his diary, Prabhupada's Jaladutta diary, September 10th, 1965. The Jaladutta is a regular cargo carrier of the Scindia Steam Navigation Company, but there is a passenger cabin aboard. During the journey from Calcutta to New York in August and September of 1965, the cabin was occupied by Sri Abhay Charana-Ravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami, whose age was listed as 69, and who was taken on board bearing a complimentary ticket with food. The Jaladutta, under the command of Kapta Arun Pandya, whose wife was also aboard, left at 9 a.m. on Friday, August 13th, day before my birthday. I was in my first year at secondary school in Auckland, but I can't remember anything really, nothing. Yes. In his diary, Srila Prabhupada noted, the cabin is quite comfortable, thanks to Lord Sri Krishna for enlightening Sumati Moraji for all these arrangements. I'm quite comfortable. But on the 14th, he reported seasickness, dizziness, vomiting, Bay of Bengal, heavy rains, more sickness. On the 19th, when the ship arrived at Colombo, Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, Prabhupada was able to get relief from his seasickness. The captain took him ashore and he traveled around Colombo by car. Then the ship went on toward Cochin on the west coast of India. Janmashtami, the appearance day of Lord Krishna, fell on the 20th of August that year. Prabhupada took the opportunity to speak to the crew about the philosophy of Lord Krishna, and he distributed prasadam he had cooked himself. August 21st was his 70th birthday, observed without ceremony at sea. That same day, the ship arrived at Cochin, and Srila Prabhupada's trunks of Srimad Bhagavatam volumes, which had been shipped from Bombay, were loaded on board. By the 23rd, the ship had put out to the Red Sea, where Srila Prabhupada encountered great difficulty. He noted in his diary rain, seasickness, dizziness, headache, no appetite, vomiting. The symptoms persisted, but it was more than seasickness. The pains in his chest made him think he would die at any moment. In 2 days, he suffered 2 heart attacks. He tolerated the difficulty, meditating on the purpose of his mission. But after 2 days of such violent attacks, he thought that if another were to come, he would certainly not survive. On the night of the 2nd day, Prabhupada had a dream. Lord Krishna, in his many forms, was rowing a boat, and he told Prabhupada that he should not fear, but should come along. Prabhupada felt assured of Lord Krishna's protection, and the violent attacks did not recur. The Jaladuta entered the Suez Canal on September 1st and stopped in Port Said on the 2nd. Srila Prabhupada visited the city with the captain and said that he liked it. By the 6th, he had recovered a little from his illness and was eating regularly again for the first time in 2 weeks, having cooked his own khichdi and puris. He reported in his diary that his strength renewed little by little. This is his diary now. Thursday, September 9th. To 4 o'clock this afternoon, we've crossed over the Atlantic Ocean for 24 hours. The whole day was clear and almost smooth. I'm taking my food regularly and have got some strength to struggle. There's also a slight tacking of the ship, and I'm feeling a slight headache also. But I'm struggling, and the nectarine of life is Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, the source of all my vitality. Friday, September 10th. Today the ship is plying very smoothly. I feel today better, but I'm feeling separation from Sri Vrindavan and my Lord Sri Govinda Gopinath Radha Damodar. The only solace is Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, in which I'm tasting the nectarine of Lord Chaitanya's Leela pastimes. I've left Bharat Bhumi just to execute the order of Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in pursuance of Lord Chaitanya's order. I have no qualification, but have taken up the risk just to carry out the order of His divine grace. I depend fully on their mercy, so far away from Vrindavan. During the voyage, so that's unquote, during the voyage, Srila Prabhupada sometimes stood on deck at the ship's rail, watching the ocean and the sky and thinking of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Vrindavan Dham, and the order of his spiritual master to go preach in the West. Mrs. Pandya, the captain's wife, whom Srila Prabhupada considered to be, quote unquote, an intelligent and learned lady, foretold Srila Prabhupada's future. If he were to pass beyond this crisis in his health, she said, it would indicate the goodwill of Lord Krishna. The ocean voyage of 1965 was a calm one for the Jaladuta. The captain said that never in his entire career had he seen such a calm Atlantic crossing. Prabhupada replied that the calmness was Lord Krishna's mercy, and Mrs. Pandya asked Prabhupada to come back with them so they might have another such crossing. Srila Prabhupada wrote in his diary, quote, "If the Atlantic would have shown its usual face, perhaps I would have died. But Lord Krishna has taken charge of the ship." On September 13th, Prabhupada noted in his diary, 32nd day of journey, cooked bati khichdi. It appeared to be delicious, so I was able to take some food. Today I have disclosed my mind to my companion, Lord Sri Krishna. There is a Bengali poem made by me in this connection, unquote. This poem was a prayer to Lord Krishna, and it is filled with Prabhupada's devotional confidence in the mission that he had undertaken on behalf of his spiritual master. An English translation of the opening stanzas follows, quote, "I emphatically say to you, O brothers, you will obtain your good fortune from the Supreme Lord, Krishna, only when Srimati Radharani becomes pleased with you. Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who is very dear to Lord Gauranga, the son of Mother Sachi, is unparalleled in his service to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. He is that great saintly spiritual master who bestows intense devotion to Krishna at different places throughout the world. By his strong desire, the holy name of Lord Gauranga will spread throughout all the countries of the Western world. In all the cities, towns, and villages on the earth, from all the oceans, seas, rivers, and streams, everyone will chant the holy name of Krishna. As the vast mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu conquers all directions, a flood of transcendental ecstasy will certainly cover the land. When all the sinful, miserable living entities become happy, the Vaishnav's desire is then fulfilled. Although my Guru Maharaj ordered me to accomplish this mission, I am not worthy or fit to do it. I am very fallen and insignificant. Therefore, O Lord, now I'm begging for your mercy so that I may become worthy, for you are the wisest and most experienced of all. Unquote. The poem ends, quote, "Today, that remembrance of you came to me in a very nice way. Because I have a very great longing, I called to you. I'm your eternal servant, and therefore I desire your association so much. O Lord Krishna, except for you, there is no means of success." Unquote. In the same straightforward, factual manner in which he had noted the date, the weather, and his state of health, he now described his helpless dependence on his, quote-unquote, companion, Lord Krishna, and his absorption in the ecstasy of separation from Krishna. He described the relationship between the spiritual master and the disciple, and he praised his own spiritual master, Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, quote, "by whose strong desire the holy name of Lord Gauranga will spread throughout all the countries of the Western world." unquote. He plainly stated that his spiritual master had ordered him to accomplish this mission of worldwide Krishna consciousness, and feeling unworthy, he prayed to Lord Krishna for strength. The last verses give an unexpected, confidential glimpse into Srila Prabhupada's direct relationship with Lord Krishna. Prabhupada called on Krishna as his dear friend and longed for the joy of again wandering the fields of Vraja. This memory of Krishna, he wrote, came because of a great desire to serve the Lord. Externally, Srila Prabhupada was experiencing great inconvenience. He had been aboard ship for a month and had suffered heart attacks and repeated seasickness. Moreover, even if he were to recover from these difficulties, his arrival in America would undoubtedly bring many more difficulties. But remembering the desire of his spiritual master, taking strength from his reading of Chaitanya Charitamrita, and revealing his mind in his prayer to Lord Krishna, Prabhupada remained confident. After a 35-day journey from Calcutta, the Jaladuta reached Boston's Commonwealth Pier at 5:30 a.m. on September the 17th, 1965. The ship was to stop briefly in Boston before proceeding to New York City. Among the first things Srila Prabhupada saw in America were the letters A and P painted on a pierfront warehouse. The grey waterfront dawn revealed the ships in the harbor, a conglomeration of lobster stands and drab buildings, and rising in the distance, the Boston skyline. Prabhupada had to pass through U.S. Immigration and Customs in Boston. His visa allowed him a 3-month stay, and an official stamped it to indicate his expected date of departure. Captain Pandya invited Prabhupada to take a walk into Boston, where the captain intended to do some shopping. They walked across a footbridge into a busy commercial area with old churches, warehouses, office buildings, bars, tawdry bookshops, nightclubs, and restaurants. Prabhupada briefly observed the city, but the most significant thing about his short stay in Boston, aside from the fact that he had now set foot in America, was that at Commonwealth Pier he wrote another Bengali poem entitled Markandeya Bhagavat Dharma, Teaching Krishna Consciousness in America. Some of the verses he wrote on board the ship that day are as follows, quote, "My dear Lord Krishna, you are so kind upon this useless soul, but I do not know why you have brought me here. Now you can do whatever you like with me. But I guess you have some business here. Otherwise, why would you bring me to this terrible place? Most of the population here is covered by the material modes of ignorance and passion. Absorbed in material life, they think themselves very happy and satisfied, and therefore they have no taste for the transcendental message of Vasudeva. I do not know how they will be able to understand it. But I know that your causeless mercy can make everything possible, because you are the most expert mystic. How will they understand the mellows of devotional service? O Lord, I'm simply praying for your mercy so that I'll be able to convince them about your message. All living entities have come under the control of the illusory energy by your will, and therefore, if you like, by your will, they can also be released from the clutches of illusion. I wish that you may deliver them. Therefore, if you so desire their deliverance, then only will they be able to understand your message. How will I make them understand this message of Krishna consciousness? I'm very unfortunate, unqualified, and the most fallen. Therefore, I'm seeking your benediction so that I can convince them, for I'm powerless to do so on my own. Somehow or other, O Lord, you've brought me here to speak about you. Now, my Lord, it is up to you to make me a success or failure as you like. O spiritual master of all the worlds, I can simply repeat your message. So if you like, you can make my power of speaking suitable for their understanding. Only by your causeless mercy will my words become pure. I'm sure that when this transcendental message penetrates their hearts, they will certainly feel gladdened and thus become liberated from all unhappy conditions of life. O Lord, I'm just like a puppet in your hands. So if you've brought me here to dance, then make me dance, make me dance. O Lord, make me dance as you like. I have no devotion, nor do I have any knowledge, but I have strong faith in the holy name of Krishna. I have been designated as Bhaktivedanta, and now, if you like, you can fulfill the real purport of Bhaktivedanta. Signed, the most unfortunate, insignificant beggar, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, on board the ship Jaladuta, Commonwealth Pier, Boston, Massachusetts, USA, dated 18th September, 1965. He was now in America. He was in a major American city, rich with billions, populated with millions, and determined to stay the way it was. Prabhupada saw Boston from the viewpoint of a pure devotee of Krishna. He saw the hellish city life, people dedicated to the illusion of material happiness. All his dedication and training moved him to give these people the transcendental knowledge and saving grace of Krishna consciousness. Yet he was feeling weak, lowly, and unable to help them on his own. He was but an, quote unquote, insignificant beggar with no money. He had barely survived the 2 heart attacks at sea. He spoke a different language. He dressed strangely. Yet he had come to tell people to give up meat-eating, illicit sex, intoxication, and gambling, and to teach them to worship Lord Krishna, who to them was a mythical Hindu god. What would he be able to accomplish? Helplessly, he spoke his heart directly to God. Quote, I wish that you may deliver them. I'm seeking your benediction so that I can convince them. Unquote. And for convincing them, he would trust in the power of God's holy name and in the Srimad Bhagavatam. This transcendental sound would clean away desire for material enjoyment from their hearts and awaken loving service to Krishna. On the streets of Boston, Prabhupada was aware of the power of ignorance and passion that dominated the city, but he had faith in the transcendental process. He was tiny, but God was infinite, and God was Krishna, his dear friend. On the 19th of September, the Jaladuta sailed into New York Harbor and docked at a Brooklyn pier at 17th Street. Srila Prabhupada saw the awesome Manhattan skyline, the Empire State Building, and like millions of visitors and immigrants in the past, the Statue of Liberty. Srila Prabhupada was dressed appropriately for a resident of Vrindavan. He wore kantimala neck beads and a simple cotton dhoti, and he carried japamala chanting beads and an old chadar or shawl. His complexion was golden, his head shaven, shika in the back, his forehead decorated with the whitish Vaishnav tilak. He wore pointed white rubber slippers, not uncommon for sadhus in India. But who in New York had ever seen or dreamed of anyone appearing like this Vaishnav? He was possibly the first Vaishnav sannyasi to arrive in New York with uncompromised appearance. Of course, New Yorkers have an expertise in not giving much attention to any kind of strange new arrival. Srila Prabhupada was on his own. He had a sponsor, Mr. Agarwal, somewhere in Pennsylvania. Surely someone would be here to greet him. Although he had little idea of what to do as he walked off the ship onto the pier, he said, "I did not know whether to turn left or right." He passed through the dockside formalities and was met by a representative from Travelers' Aid, sent by the Agarwals in Pennsylvania, who offered to take him to the Scindia ticket office in Manhattan to book his return passage to India. At the Scindia office, Prabhupada spoke with the ticket agent, Joseph Forster, who was impressed by this unusual passenger's Vaishnav appearance, his light luggage, and his apparent poverty. He regarded Prabhupada as a priest. Most of Scindia's passengers were businessmen or families, so Mr. Forster had never seen a passenger wearing the traditional Vaishnav dress of India. He found Srila Prabhupada to be, quote unquote, a pleasant gentleman who spoke of, quote unquote, the nice accommodations and treatment he had received aboard the Jaladuta, unquote. Prabhupada asked Mr. Forster to hold space for him on a return ship to India. His plans were to leave in about 2 months, and he told Mr. Forster that he would keep in touch. Carrying only 40 rupees cash, which he himself called a few hours spending in New York, and an additional $20 he'd collected from selling 3 volumes of the Bhagavatam to Captain Pandya, Srila Prabhupada, with umbrella and suitcase in hand, and still escorted by the Travelers' Aid representative, set out for the Port Authority bus terminal to arrange for his trip to Butler. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
I was looking at prices of the water pump. It's from like 355 to 600 or 700 rand. But it depends how high the water must shoot. That's how expensive it is.
Not very high.
This is like 1.8 meters it just shoot out.
From the ground.
From here, from the base of
Up to the
the guy's head.
coward boy.
Yeah, the coward.